We'll continue with this high poly pattern. Let's look at the concept art first. It's a rough sketch of a cast iron sheet. The iron sheet shouldn't have too many details. Because of the limitations of the time period, the carving likely wasn't very intricate. So we don't need excessive detail in our model. I found some references similar to this. However, these references are too detailed. We don't need that level of intricacy. Let's find a similar pattern for the carving. I found some here. Like this one, for example. But directly mapping this pattern will make it look too wide. It'll appear broader. Let's try it. I'll show you. We only need to make one. We can copy the rest and apply a rebuild mesh with dynamic subdivision. Now, let's import the pattern. Dragging this pattern isn't quite right. Let's try the previous pattern instead. Because it's a 90-degree angle, we just need one corner. It's too high, let's lower the intensity. If it's convex, the area is too large. If we make it concave, it's unsuitable. We need to modify the pattern library. You can also collect some. I'll share these with everyone later. Just find a similar pattern, like a 90-degree square pattern. It could also be a 90-degree angle. Let's see if there are any suitable ones. Let's use that one for now. Let's use the pattern I chose earlier. It's difficult to find one now. We need a 90-degree square corner pattern. Let's use this one. This was my initial approach. Then I select an area. Let's redo it. Direct mapping makes it too wide here. If you want the line, if you want engraved lines. So we can do it this way. See? Then select any channel. Since red and green are the same, hold Ctrl and click the mouse. Left-click to load the selection. Then create a new layer, select this area, and right-click. Add a white stroke. OK. Then Ctrl+D to deselect. Then fill it with black. Now it has a stroke. Let's make the stroke a bit stronger. A little wider. It's a bit thin now. It looks white. Okay, good. Now, let's import what we just made. So that's adding a stroke. Hold down the Out key. And drag it out. See the jagged edges? That's because the subdivision is too low. Go back and increase the subdivision. Then Ctrl+D, and do it again. Just subdivide it. Next, let's add a glow blur. A blur of 2 in the alpha channel. Okay, now we find a suitable position to map it. You can also add a layer at this time. Adding a layer for production is also possible. Then blur it a little. Holding down the Shift key will blur it like this. Its edges will be softer. The brush is relatively small, so it will be lighter like this. For the side, we also used the previous one. I refined this a bit. I enlarged it a bit. Then we also do a stroke for this one in the same way as before. Then fill this one. Save it, import it, and find a suitable position. Okay, it's basically fine. Then, here, we need to flip it. Flip it vertically. Find a rough position. This is hard to position, because it's not very good after dragging. It can't be moved. Now it's almost there. That's it. Then we smooth it. Okay, now the pattern is done. Then we need to modify the edges. Save it. This has a slight problem, because we didn't account for the backside. Let's see, we need to ignore the back face. Okay, it's added. Let's try again. This will have problems after exporting it. It's projected to the top because a bit was exported. We can do this. Let's add a mask. Then we'll remap it. The top won't be affected. The subdivision level is gone. Let's go back. It's back now. Right, add a mask first, then drag and invert it. Let's see, that looks about right. Then smooth it out. Okay. Now let's do some wear and tear. Let's do some wear and tear on this end too. This wear and tear is essential. It's where you get the best effect. Wear, damage, scratches, etc. Because with these details, when you bake the curvature map and the AO map, you get different masks and effects. Using a smart mask in ISP, it'll work. Without it, there's no effect, just a bevel. And the effect is weak. We can use this method for guidelines. There are other ways. The first is projection. But alignment is difficult, making perfect alignment impossible. And there's the texture issue. The second method is manual drawing. which is quite time-consuming. It's also easy to be inaccurate, especially with curves and patterns. Hand drawing takes time. The third method is to assign UVs. Then apply a texture in ZBrush. Like applying a texture, matching the pattern. Just like in Photoshop, and make UV align it, then paste it into ZBrush. Paste it, then generate a mask. After generating the mask, squeeze it out. That's the perfect way. This is usually used for repeating textures. Patterns with repeating textures are all made this way. Two-fold and four-fold repeating patterns are generally done this way. If we use this later, we'll demonstrate it. Okay, let's use the damage tool to add somewhere. Let's address the more severely worn areas. Okay, let's use some metal brushes. Let's use metal brushes. First, let's find a metal brush and restore it. Let's try a few. The first one has a texture, which we can overlay now or later. It can be overlaid at any stage. This metal isn't particularly smooth. Not polished. If it were cast iron, it would be a bit rougher. Let's look at other brushes, zoomed in. These scratches will create more scratches. Add a little, but don't overdo it. This gives it a rough surface. We don't need large metal areas for now. Texture might be better. Let's look at others. This one is also aged, making it uneven. This one is also uneven, but we don't need it right now. so we can skip this. Let's look at other brushes. This is edge detail. It has this effect. But it's too strong for now. It'd be best to find a brush preview, because the preview is gone. This is a scratch, damage can be dragged in. Resulting in this damage. It's a bit coarse. We'll skip this for now, we'll do it later. Because adding many details now might look unbalanced. After we're done, we'll do this last. We need some rivets. Some rivets. We'll import the previous images, I found them. We can use this alpha for the rivets. Increase the intensity slightly, this is a better way to create anchor points. It's a bit large, make it smaller. Okay. Okay. Add a few small grooves here. For the grooves, let's use a different alpha. Let's use this one and increase the intensity. Hold Alt, you can use this method. Use this one, it's sharper. Let's smooth it out and take a look. It's mostly good. The grooves might be a little thin. Make the lines thicker. They're a bit thin, but it's fine. We can refine it with a texture map. Okay. That's it for these blocks.